An elderly woman who had just finished shopping returned to her car. As she approached the car, to her surprise, she found 4 men sitting inside the car. She dropped her shopping bag, she reached into her pocketbook, and she pulled out a handgun. She pointed the gun toward the men and screamed for them to get out of her car. All 4 of the men quickly got out of the car and ran like crazy. Good for her, right? Somewhat shaken, the woman put her gun away, picked up her bags, and got into the front seat. And she then took out her key to the car and to put it in the ignition, but for some reason the car would not fit the ignition. She looked at her keys to make sure she had the right key, and she tried again. Still, it would not fit into the ignition. Suddenly, it dawned on her that this was not her car. Her car was on the next row. And so she found her new car, and then she found her car and then drove off. By the way, she did drive down to the police station to let them know what happened. And as she told her story, the officer behind the desk, who was about ready to fall out of his chair laughing, pointed her to another desk where 4 men were reporting a carjacking by a little old woman with a handgun. Now, I don't know if that really happened or not, but I can picture it taking place. What happened there is what she thought belonged to her didn't. The car belonged to someone else. Last week, I kicked off a mini-series on the subject of stewardship. The foundational principle that was laid last week from 1 Chronicles chapter 29 was that the God who owns it all loans it all for the purpose of revealing to all who he is. The God who owns it all loans it all for the purpose of revealing to all who he is. See, we are called to be stewards, managers over everything God has given us. That means our time, that means our abilities, that means our relationships, that means our jobs, that means our spiritual gifts, and yes, it means our wallets. And like the woman who thought the car belonged to her, we too mistakenly think we are the owners of all the stuff. We think our lives are our own, but they really belong to God. Stewardship. The God who owns it all, loans it all for the purpose of revealing to all who he is. It could be rightly argued, I think, that this is our ultimate calling as followers of Christ. Now, the direction for this 4-week series is driven by one word, the word trust. Trust. Stewardship really is a trust issue, and that's our overall theme for this 4-week series. This morning, we're looking at one of Jesus' parables in Matthew chapter 25. Matthew chapter 25, I'd invite you to turn in your Bibles or on your phone, however you get there, to Matthew chapter 25. And as you're turning there, I want to give you some context of this parable. Jesus tells 2 stories back to back in chapter 25. The 2 stories are on the heels of Jesus' command to watch. In Matthew 24, just prior to the section we're going to be looking at, in Matthew 24, verse 42, we find these words, "Therefore keep watch, because you do not know on what day your Lord will come." Now, the point is quite obvious. Since the very moment of Jesus' coming is unknown, we need to be ready. Jesus then tells the story of the 10 virgins or the 10 bridesmaids who were waiting for the wedding ceremony. 5 of them were ready and 5 of them were not ready. See, while we wait for his return, we are to be ready. We are to be prepared for his coming at any time, since we do not know the exact hour. But what are we to do while we wait? What are we to do while we wait? Well, that brings us to the second story Jesus told in verses 14 through 30 of Matthew 25. Now, it's called the parable of the talents. Now, there's something that's often misunderstood that will immediately trip us up if we don't get this right at the outset. I mean, what's a talent? Well, I can't tell you what talent is, because we see the word talent and we think American Idol or The Voice or Dancing with the Stars or X Factor or America's Got Talent, right? I mean, we love our talent TV shows. When we come to this story and we see the word talent, immediately our minds go there. And you know, frankly, I have heard some awful sermons on this passage of Scripture. I even looked up a few this past week, and they butchered it bad. You don't need to know how that is, but they really did. I've heard preachers take this story and then speak of the talents that God has given us that we're to use for Him. So if your talent is gardening, you should garden for God. If your talent is crochet, you should crochet for Christ. If your talent is juggling, juggle for Jesus. I mean, you get the point. I don't think that's exactly what Jesus is getting at here. Hopefully, as we work through this, it will become clear as to the mystery of a talent and the main point Jesus is teaching. Now, what I want to do is I want to read through this passage of Scripture. We're going to stop along the way, and I want to make some observations and even give some markers that will keep us on track this morning. These markers are statements to look at and follow as guiding principles along this path of stewardship. There's going to be 4 markers. It will be obvious when we get there. No, so follow along. I hope you're there. Matthew chapter 25, look at verse 14. Jesus says, again it will be like. Now, right there, that's telling us it ties back to the previous parable back in verse 1 of 25 when he says, at that time the kingdom of heaven will be like. So Jesus is still addressing here this matter of readiness and what we're to do while we wait for His coming. So he says, again it will be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted his property to them. Now, we have to ask the question, whose property is it? The master's. The master owns whatever it is he's about to entrust to them. He owns it all. Verse 15. To one he gave 5 talents of money, to another 2 talents, to another 1 talent, each according to his ability. Then he went on his journey. So it's a talent of money. We can only guess as to a talent's worth, because we don't know if it's a talent of gold or a talent of silver. But for our purposes, I can reasonably estimate that it's worth, let's say, $1,000. So the first guy is given $5,000. The second guy is given $2,000. And the third guy is given $1,000, $1,000. Now notice here that the talent was something that the master gave based off of abilities. Now this is what's going on. Here's the deal. The owner is going to be going away for a while. And so he sits down with his workers to make sure that his property will be cared for while he's away. He doesn't want his business to tank. So he's trusting in these workers to keep up with the economy, to continue to produce crops, to make wise investments. And he knows the abilities and skills of each of his workers, and so he gives them an amount that he believes they are capable of handling properly. Now, the master is the one who determines who gets what. Now, here's our first principle. Here's our first marker. The God who owns it all can do with it as he wills. The God who owns it all can do with it as he wills. If he wants to give one person 5, he can give him 5. If he wants to give him 2, he can give him 2. If he wants to give him 1, he can give him 1. The God who owns it all can do with it as he wills. You see, God is not obligated to treat everyone the same. I know it's politically correct, but it's nonsense. God's not obligated to treat everyone the same. Now, you can kick against that. You can complain about it. You can live in self-pity. You can use it as an excuse, or you can accept it and begin where you are and use what you've been given. You see, the question is not, what have I been given? It is, what will I do with what I've been given? Keep that back there. See, it's okay to be a 1 if you're a 1. There's no shame in being a 2 if you're a 2. If you're a 5, be a 5. We all hold different bags. See, the problem comes in when a 1 wants to be a 2 and a 2 wants to be a 5. Don't get hung up on the amounts. What is significant is what we do with what we have been given. I ended last week with this question. What will you do with what God has placed in your hands? What will you do with what God has placed in your hands? We have to ask that again. Now, what do each of these servants do with what they've been given? Well, we come to verse 16. The man who received the 5 talents went at once. Don't miss that. He went immediately. He went at once. He put his money to work. He gained 5 more. And so he invested. He traded. Over a period of time, he doubled it. Pretty good. Number 2 guy also doubled it, it says in verse 17. So also the one with 2 talents gained 2 more. Well, what does bachelor number 1 do? Verse 18 says, but the man who had received the 1 talent, he went off, he dug a hole in the ground, and he hid his master's money. He does absolutely nothing with $1,000 he was given. Now, things are going to end badly for this man. I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but you see, this guy knows, like the other 2, that someday his master would return. That's exactly what happened. Verse 19 says, after a long time, the master of those servants returned. After a long time. What does that sound like? Jesus said that someday he would return. The disciples thought it would be in their lifetime. And if you were reading writings of our church fathers, they wrote with great expectancy that the day of Christ's return was near. As generations before us lived during times of war and lived during the Great Depression, many believed that was going to be the hour of Christ's return. And here we are. I mean, growing up, I wondered if he was going to return in my childhood. And I figured it would be on Christmas Eve, so I wouldn't get to open those Christmas presents, right? Or the day before I got my license, or the day before I graduated, or got married. You just ruined the whole thing. Don't look at me like that. You thought the same thing. See, we don't know when, but there's a day that the owner of all this stuff is going to return. While on a South Pole expedition, British explorer Ernest Shackleton left a few men on Elephant Island. He promised that he would, in fact, return. Later, when Shackleton did try and return, huge icebergs blocked his way. After several attempts, finally, the way was opened up in the ice, and Shackleton was able to get to his men on the island. His men, ready and waiting, quickly scrambled aboard, and no sooner had the ship cleared the island when the ice crashed together behind them. They just made it. Contemplating their narrow escape, Shackleton said to his men, "It was fortunate you're all packed and ready to go." And they replied, they said, "We never gave up hope. We were always ready to go," reminding each other, the boss may come home today. The boss may come today. It's how we're to live. Are you ready to go? Are you living every moment in anticipation of the coming of Christ, holding on to things of this life very loosely? Are you prepared to give an account? Do you know him? Do you know him? The master of those servants returned. They settle accounts with them, and you ask, why does he settle accounts with them? Why does he want to know what they did with what he gave them? That leads to our second marker, our second statement that keeps us on the right path. Marker number 2, what is given by the master is not for our own use, but for the master's gain. That's stewardship. What is given by the master is not for our own use, but for the master's gain. See, that means there will be a day when we will have to give an account for how we used what God gave us for him. See, what he's given us is not for ourselves. It's given to us to invest in the master's gain. So even though this is a long time and we don't know when he's going to come, what we have we're to use for him, not for ourselves. A little boy was laying on a hill in the middle of a meadow on a warm spring day, and he began to think about God. He called up, "God, are you really there?" To his astonishment, a voice came from the heavens, "Yes, I am. What can I do for you?" The inquisitive little boy asked, "God, what is 1,000,000 years like to you?" God replied, 1,000,000 years to me is like a minute. "Oh," said the boy, "well then what's $1,000,000 like to you?" God answered, $1,000,000 to me is like a penny. "Wow," remarked the boy, getting an idea. "You're so generous. Can I have one of your pennies?" God replied, "Sure thing, just a minute." See, while we wait, in what seems like a long time, we can easily forget that there is a day he will settle accounts with what he has given to us. So each of the 3 guys in the story, they give an account. The one with $5,000 doubled it. He was commended. Verse 21 says, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things." Now catch these words. "Come and share in your master's happiness." The 2-talent person received the same praise from the master, and he too was invited in to share in the master's happiness. Now there's a principle worth grabbing right here, because there's something in it for us. We do have an incentive. Here's the thought. Here's marker number 3. In the end, God is after your joy. In the end, God is after your joy. See, God is not after this begrudging submission. "Oh, I got to do God's work. I really want to, but he wants me to, so here I go. Another day for God." I mean, let's be honest. We can be a sorry bunch sometimes. Our faces and our attitudes don't invite people to ask, "What's with you? Tell me of your hope." I mean, can you imagine if we carried on like this about our marriage? "Oh, I'm going to stick it out to the end. Oh, it's what I vowed." I mean, anyone not married going, "Oh, that's beautiful. I want to be married." God invites us into this happiness. Certainly we know that we're going to know that in full on the other side, but in knowing what awaits us should be cause for joyful service now. Last week I mentioned that God loves a cheerful giver. He's after your joy. There's something contagious about joyful followers of Jesus Christ. Look around you. And the unbelieving community. Look at the world. Let me ask you, are people happy? I mean, is happiness characteristic of our day? I mean, you would think with all the toys and all the stuff and all the playthings we have in this country, we would be deliriously happy. We're not. Instead, all that stuff has left us what? Bored, tired, restless, frustrated, lonely, desperately seeking an answer for this perpetual dissatisfaction. Might the answer be, in living a meaningful life for what matters for eternity, isn't the answer in the awesome privilege of serving the Creator God? Don't we find a little incentive here for working hard so we give back to him a maximum return? And 2 of the 3 servants are commended. They're invited into the master's happiness. The third guy stands before his master, and he says in verse 24, Verse 24, Master, I knew that you're a hard man, harvesting where you have not sown, gathering where you have not scattered seed. So I was afraid, and I went out and I hid your talent in the ground. See, here's what belongs to you. Now, I have this feeling, and I'm speculating, that when the guy rehearsed what he was going to say to his master, it all made sense. His excuses sounded plausible at first. And I wonder that in the same way, the plausible-sounding excuses we have come up with for not going hard after God, the excuses we have come up with for not being involved, for not giving ourselves to the best things, aren't going to sound too reasonable when we stand before the Lord. Any excuses that you're making for non-performance that you have to start to wonder are not going to stack up when you speak it to him? What's the issue with this one talent guy? Well, unless I miss my guess, it's an issue of trust. He did not trust his master. Why didn't he trust him? Well, there isn't anything in the story that would lead us to question the character of the master. So what is this guy's problem? Why is his thinking off concerning the master? Is it because he received a lesser amount than the other 2? Is it because he compared himself with the other 2 and he felt cheated by the master? I mean, do you ever feel like this one talent servant? Do you find yourself playing the comparison game? Here's marker number 4, right here. Marker number 4. What we have been given only looks small when compared to what others have. That's whole life stuff right there. What we have been given only looks small when compared to what others have. If only rather than comparing and feeling slighted, this one talent servant considered himself blessed to be given a talent at all. God did give him something to manage. He did. It only looks small when compared to what others have. But you see, stewardship isn't about comparison. It's to trust the master and that what he's given you comes from a good God, a perfect God who has his wise purposes in everything. You need to stop the comparison stuff. And what's your view of God? Do you trust him with what he's given you, that he knows what he's doing? Because this one talent servant, get this, didn't know the master, so he didn't trust him. He didn't trust him, so he did nothing. He did nothing, so what he had was taken from him. He didn't know the master, so he didn't trust the master. He didn't trust him, so he did nothing. He did nothing, so that what he had was taken from him. That's what we see next. Here's a spoiler alert here. These are going to be tough words to swallow. Okay, I'm just telling you that right up front. In verse 26, the master says, "You wicked," and in New Englanders, that doesn't mean excellent. Okay. Just want to make sure we get that clear. "You wicked, lazy servants." The master then uses the servant's own words against him. "So you knew that I harvest where I have not sown and gather where I have not scattered? Well, then you should have put my money on deposit with the bankers, so that when I returned, I would have received it back with interest. 1,000 he had was taken from him and given to the guy who had 10,000 bucks. That doesn't seem fair." Jesus gives us the principle, ties it all together. He says in verse 29, "For everyone who has will be given more, and he will have an abundance. Whoever does not have, even what he has will be taken from him." And then we hear these dreadful words, verse 30, "And throw that worthless servant outside into the darkness, where there'll be weeping and gnashing of teeth." Now, I don't want to lose you in all this and wonder what that is and think about all that. And so I'm just going to quickly touch on this and get back to our stewardship stuff. See, the key to this is remembering the servant did not know the master. He had a faulty view of him, He feared him, so he wasn't about to trust the master with anything of his, certainly not his own life. So to reject the master is to be rejected by him. See, again, I have to ask the question, do you know him? Do you know the Creator, Redeemer, God? Do you have a relationship with him through Jesus Christ? Do you? Now, I want to stay on our path of stewardship. So I remind you of our 4 markers that will lead us to our destination, the peak of our story, the point of it all. Here are the 4 markers again. What is given by the master is not for our own use, but for the master's gain. Marker number 2, in the end, God is after your joy. Marker number 3, what we have been given only looks small when compared to what others have. And then I'll go back to marker number 2 because I missed it. What is given by the master is not for our own use, but for the master's gain. Those are your 4 markers. I gave them in a different order, just to make sure you're aware. Or because I forgot. Now, what do we take away from this story? How does this relate to our subject of stewardship? What is the point of it all? It's all wrapped up in the mystery of the talents. What is the mystery of the talents? I would invite you to think of talent as opportunity. Opportunity. This parable is about what you do with your opportunities that come your way based off of the abilities he has given you. The 5-talent man was given opportunities. And he was given the opportunities to use for the sake of the master's kingdom. The 2-talent man also had opportunities to use for the sake of the kingdom, and he did. The 1-talent man blew his opportunity. The tragedy of a wasted opportunity. See, you say, don't be lazy and waste the opportunities you've been given. And I think the effectiveness of this parable lies in the fact that the one with the least amount of opportunity failed to capitalize on it. I think that's what really drives this home. It's been said, many people neglect the task that lies at hand and are content with having wished to do the impossible. In other words, I don't want to do just this one little measly thing here, this one opportunity. I'm waiting to do the big thing, whatever that is, and so I'm going to neglect this one little opportunity I have right here because I'm being prepared for this big thing. And what God has for me. And it's all out of whack with this parable. You see, the amount given isn't the point. It's a matter of what we do with the opportunity we have been given for the sake of the kingdom. It's a matter of what we will do with the opportunity we have been given for the sake of the kingdom. See, we're all called to be good stewards of opportunities. We're all called to use our time wisely. Does it feel like, at times, you can just never catch up with life? It's moving just so fast. A Tacoma, Washington newspaper carried the story of Tattoo, the basset hounds. Tattoo didn't intend to go for an evening run, but when his owner shut the dog's leash in the car door and took off for a drive with Tattoo still outside the vehicle, Tattoo had no choice. Motorcycle officer Terry Filbert noticed a passing vehicle with something dragging behind it. It was the basset hound picking up his feet, putting them down as fast as he could. Police officer chased the car to a stop. Tattoo was rescued, by the way. He was okay. But not before the dog had reached a speed of 20 to 25 miles per hour, rolling over several times. And I thought, that might describe me. Too many of us end up living like Tattoo. Our days are marked by picking them up and putting them down as fast as we can. All these opportunities go right by us. Running! I gotta keep up. Opportunity, opportunity, opportunity. Our feet are moving like crazy. Is it time to learn another way to live? See, God has entrusted us with opportunities based on how we are made. This church has got talent. Think opportunities. Bunch of opportunities all around the room. There's different opportunities for the person sitting next to you than for you and for me. We have all kinds. See, I'm not to concern myself with opportunities you may have that are different than mine. We have different opportunities based on how God has wired us. For example, I am not wired to build things with my hands. When it comes to woodworking and anything like that, I'm terrible. I struggle to construct anything out of wood. I drove my shop teacher into early retirement. He said, "I'll never teach again." You would not want me to build a deck for you. You don't even want to ask me to help you build a deck. I joke that when I hammer something, I am like lightning. Not in speed, but I never strike twice in the same place. See, I'm not wired. I am wired to speak, to communicate. I am wired, as far as I can remember as a kid, I am wired to listen to others, listen to some of their problems. I was that guy in high school that girls liked as a friend. Guys get that. They like to just talk to me, tell me their stuff, their problems. I met someone in a social setting before long. That person was telling me their whole life story. See, with that, though, comes opportunities. Opportunities. See, if you're married, you're given the opportunity to display the worth of Christ by fighting for that marriage, making the best possible marriage you can have. If you're single, you have opportunities you wouldn't have by being married. See, you have different opportunities than I have based on how you're made, based where you are in life. If you're a 5, be a 5. If you're a 2, be a 2. If you're a 1, be a 1. We need to trust God with how He has made us and life's events that have shaped us, and cultivate contentment with what we have been given. Be yourself. Know how you're wired. Walk in the opportunities presented to you. What do we do while we wait? Look for opportunities. What's the key to all this? One word: begin. We need to stop saying, when? When I graduate, when I get married, when I'm old, when I retire, when this happens, when my circumstances change, when? What is your when? We need to turn our when into now. Today is the day of opportunity. What are we going to do with today? Because that's all we have. What are we doing with the time we have while we wait? At a prestigious university, they had this rule that if the professor had not arrived in class within the first 15 minutes of the hour, the class was considered a walk, and the students were free to leave with no penalties for missing class. Now, the rooms in the school were equipped with the old-fashioned style clocks where the minute hand mechanically ticked ahead after each minute. Young people take this by faith. They really are clocks still like that. Well, the students discovered that they could cause the clock to jump ahead 1 minute if they hit the clock with an eraser. So the professor of this one particular class was not the most punctual, so it became a ritual for these students to take target practice at the clock from these erasers from the marker board. And after a few well-aimed erasers hit their target, bingo, 15 minutes had passed, and the class walked. This happened many times throughout the semester. Well, at the end of the semester, the final exam rolled around, and the professor rolled into the room and strolled into the room, and he passed out the test, and he said, "You have 1 hour to complete the test." He gave them all a test, and then he went around, and he collected all the erasers in the room, and he began taking aim at the clock. When he had successfully jumped the clock ahead 1 hour, the professor called out, "Time's up!" Then he went around and he collected all the papers. There will be a day when God calls out, time's up! Time's up. He sets the time. He can call it any time he chooses. And you know what? We can't fool God. He knows what we're doing with the time we have. Do we really want to spend it throwing erasers at him?